Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we're taking on a massive two-part investigation into the very nature of human intelligence.
That's a big one.
It is. Our source material is complex because it tackles two really profound, interconnected areas of cognition: the external influence of technology and, the internal structure of language.
And I think that's the critical distinction here. We're moving beyond just simple functionality.
Right.
The material really challenges us to look at the external world, our devices, our screens, and the internal architecture, the grammar and vocabulary we inherited as fundamental shapers of intelligence.
They're not just things we use, they're the filters through which we understand the world.
Exactly. They are both toolkits and, in a way, frameworks for our thoughts.
Absolutely. So our analysis, it's going to start with this technology puzzle.
Yeah.
Is the limitless access to information, these amazing AI tools and apps, genuinely making us intellectually sharper?
Are we really extending our cognitive capacity?
Yeah. Or, on the flip side, is all this convenience creating a dangerous degree of mental complacency? Basically, is it making us intellectually lazy because we just outsource all the hard mental work?
It's one of the most pressing debates right now. I mean, the stakes are so high for how we learn, how we work,
And how we think?
and critically, how we approach complex tasks, whether that's a new professional challenge or, achieving mastery in a difficult area like advanced English comprehension and communication. We need to dissect both sides of this
Catalyst versus the complacency risk.
with real rigor. Yeah.
And once we've wrestled with that external technological filter, we're going to pivot to the internal one: linguistic relativity. We want to truly dive into how the language we use, its grammar, its vocabulary influences not just what we say, but how we think.
How we perceive space, time, even color, it goes so far beyond language as just a basic communication tool.
It's a fundamental shift in perspective.
And what makes this pairing so powerful is that both discussions really center on structure. You have the structure technology imposes on our learning habits, and then the structure language imposes on our thought patterns. The research here, especially when we get to part 3, moves from this kind of abstract theory to some really surprising, measurable differences in how we process things based on the words we use every day. So as you listen, we'd encourage you to reflect on your own digital habits and maybe the subtle linguistic assumptions you carry.
Okay, so let's kick off with the undeniable upside: technology as an intellectual catalyst. And the first point is just so powerful, it almost redesigns the entire educational landscape.
It really does.
We're talking about the democratization of knowledge and access.
Right. I mean, historically, if you wanted the highest level of learning, you had these huge geographical and financial barriers. You needed a library, you needed tuition.
You had to physically be there.
You had to physically move. And the digital age has just, it's torn all of those barriers down. We are talking about vast, unprecedented amounts of high-quality information available instantly to billions of people.
It's the closest thing we've ever had to having the Library of Alexandria in your pocket, right? And we see this most clearly in this educational goldmine of MOOC's massive open online courses.
Yes. Platforms like Coursera, EDX, Khan Academy, they aren't just offering supplemental material anymore.
No, not at all.
They often provide full university-level curricular, complete with video lectures from world-renowned professors at places like MIT or Stanford. It just levels the playing field dramatically.
So a student in a remote village can get the exact same course on advanced physics as a student in downtown London.
The very same one. And the sheer variety is critical, too. This isn't just about general studies. You can delve into previously niche or, highly specialized subjects.
Like what?
Well, from really complex areas like quantum mechanics to detailed humanities topics like post-colonial literary theory, things that were, literally locked away behind the high walls of university libraries and expensive journals.
And if we narrow in on the advanced English learner, this access is just a massive benefit.
A huge benefit. You get direct exposure to authentic, high-level English that is just so far superior to a curated textbook. We're talking about consuming full university lectures on, say, macroeconomic theory.
A topic you're not even an expert in.
Right, or reading published research papers and sophisticated articles from sources like The Economist or the New York Review of Books.
And that's exposure to English being wielded at its most complex, its most nuanced. You're just absorbing sophisticated vocabulary, complex sentence structures, expert argumentation styles.
It's professional and academic language in its native, challenging habitat, and that is absolutely invaluable for mastering the kind of advanced concepts you need for professional or graduate level work. ###Flicks.2, fostering critical evaluation and structured learning. So beyond just giving you the raw information, technology also fosters this unique type of critical engagement. It really encourages self-directed learning, mostly thanks to these instant feedback loops.
That instant gratification of curiosity is so key, isn't it? If you're reading an article and you hit a complex philosophical term or a tricky grammatical structure that confuses you, you don't have to wait.
You don't have to wait for class, no.
You look it up instantly.
Yeah.
And that moment of confusion sparks immediate research. Within seconds, you have scholarly articles, expert blog posts, discussion forums where people are debating the precise meaning.
And that creates this really positive learning cycle. An initial question sparks an answer, which then inevitably leads to another deeper question.
You become the active driver.
Precisely. You're constantly chasing these intellectual threads wherever they lead, rather than just passively receiving information in some preset linear path.
And this is where that critical evaluation piece really comes into play. If you're researching a nuanced topic, let's say the ethical implications of using deepfakes in media, a quick search is going to give you a scientific paper on the tech, an opinion piece from a major newspaper, and probably 3 competing blog posts arguing different political angles.
So you, the user, you're forced to become a kind of triage expert. You have to compare these sources, assess the author's bias, distinguish between evidence-based research like a peer-reviewed study, and just, emotional or political appeals.
It's a phenomenally real-time exercise in sharpening your analytical skills.
Absolutely. And that necessity for precise handling of conflicting data, it directly sharpens your own communication.
How so?
Well, when you write about that topic, you can't just assert a claim. You have to use careful, nuanced language. You might write something like, while several high-profile online sources have claimed X, analysis of peer-reviewed research suggests Y based on a larger, more statistically robust sample size.
That kind of phrasing shows you've actually done the work. You've engaged with the complexity.
It does. And the material pointed to a great case study for this. Using a platform like Coursera for learning academic writing, these are fantastic because they don't just give you information, they demand production from you.
Right, they immerse you in that specific environment. You get the video lectures, the readings, quizzes, but most importantly, assignments that require you to produce essays or reports.
You're forced to actively use the vocabulary, the formal sentence structures, the argumentation style specific to that field.
And what about the discussion forums?
Let's not forget those. Engaging with other learners from around the world, asking specific questions about, say, source citation, or debating the validity of a piece of data that is spontaneous, active communication.
So you're applying what you learned, but under peer scrutiny.
Which is an extremely effective way to solidify those advanced language skills. #1.3 tools for cognitive augmentation.
Okay, now let's talk about tools that go beyond just access and actually serve as, like, co-pilots for our brains. Cognitive augmentation.
Exactly. We're moving from simple access to active assistance. Think about powerful organizers like Notion, Evernote, Trello. These are pretty much essential for knowledge workers now.
They help you wrangle that immense amount of digital input we're all getting.
They do, and they help you manage complex projects and fundamentally streamline advanced learning tasks.
So for an advanced language learner, where the sheer volume of new information, grammar rules, vocab, idioms can feel just overwhelming, these tools must be transformative.
They are. You can use something like Notion to categorize vocabulary by theme, link grammar concepts to practice exercises, schedule spaced repetition reviews automatically.
It takes the administrative burden off your mind.
And that's the crucial cognitive link here. It relates directly to something called cognitive load theory.
Okay, break that down for us.
Our working memory, the mental space where we actively process information, it's extremely limited. So if you're struggling just to organize the material, that mental effort, which is known as extraneous cognitive load, is basically wasted.
So by offloading the organization and the scheduling to an app, you free up your limited working memory for the actual difficult task.
Hard stuff, yeah. Understanding the complex concepts, figuring out tricky grammar, synthesizing data.
The material also points to sophisticated language checkers like Grammarly. These are way more than just spell checkers now.
Oh, absolutely. They're offering real-time algorithmic feedback on sentence structure, tone, clarity, conciseness. They're like having an automated editor on your shoulder.
But isn't there a risk there? If you just click accept on every suggestion, you risk falling into that laziness trap we talked about.
That's the key, you're right. The benefit comes from analyzing the suggestion. When Grammarly highlights a passive construction and suggests an active one, you should pause and ask why. Oh, because an active verb makes the sentence stronger and more direct.
So that process of analysis is what internalizes the writing principle.
Hmm.
You learn why the change works.
And then the next time you write, you apply that knowledge yourself, independently. That's what turns the tool into a genuine cognitive enhancer, not just a crutch.
And then we have learning apps like Duolingo or Memrise, which consciously incorporate neuroscientific principles.
Right, specifically spaced repetition.
And these apps are so efficient because they're based on how our long-term memory actually works.
Exactly. Instead of cramming, the app's algorithm prompts you to review a word or concept right before you're statistically likely to forget it. And that timely retrieval is what strengthens the memory trace. It maximizes retention.
And AI is pushing this even further. The potential for AI tutors to offer, like hyper-personalization, is immense.
Oh, yeah. Imagine an AI tutor instantly identifying that you consistently struggle with, say, the use of modal verbs in reported speech.
It wouldn't just tell you that you're wrong.
No, it would instantly generate a batch of targeted practice exercises, contextual examples, and focused explanations specifically on that one structure. It's surgical. It helps you achieve mastery much faster because the practice is targeted to your precise weakness.
And we touched on the neuroscientific angle a bit.
Yeah.
The idea that dynamic, interactive digital tools might stimulate brain pathways differently than passive methods, like just reading a textbook.
And this ties into a concept called cognitive agility,
Which is the brain's ability to multitask effectively, to switch between different modes of thought, analytical, creative, linguistics smoothly.
Yeah, and the material suggests combining brain training apps, which focus on that mental flexibility with language practice.
Give me a real-world example of that. What would that look like in practice?
Okay, so think about a user engaging with a really complex visual task on an app, say, a tricky logic puzzle. But they have to describe their strategy, the steps they're considering, and their rationale out loud in English in real time as they're solving it.
Wow. So you're juggling visual processing, complex problem solving, and precise linguistic output all at the same time.
It's powerful training for that kind of mental agility. Hashtag 1.4 global collaboration and lifelong learning.
The last major positive effect to cover is how technology has just completely erased distance, right?
Yeah.
It's fundamentally changed collaboration and made lifelong learning the new standard.
Absolutely. Platforms like Zoom, Teams, Google Meet, they've allowed us to have spontaneous, real-time conversations with native speakers across the globe. This is where fluency really takes off, far beyond what any classroom could offer.
It's the difference between scripted practice and the chaotic reality of human conversation.
That's it. You're forced to react instantly, formulate complex thoughts on the fly, process diverse accents, and navigate cultural misunderstandings in real time.
This is why those dedicated language exchange platforms like Tandem or HelloTalk are so effective.
Yes. By connecting learners with international peers, you are constantly exposed to slang, colloquialisms, cultural nuances, different dialects. It refines your listening skills and forces a level of adaptability that's crucial for real mastery.
And intellectual exchange doesn't always have to be so formal. I mean, even online communities, subreddits, LinkedIn groups, specialized forums provide crucial practice.
In advanced written argumentation and debate, yeah. Participating in those spaces means responding thoughtfully to complex posts, synthesizing external information, and adhering to the specific communication norms of that community.
The jargon, the level of formality.
It's practical, high-stakes communication practice.
And finally, technology profoundly supports lifelong learning, which, let's be honest, is essential in almost every professional field now. You can't just rely on your formal education anymore.
Precisely. Online professional development resources like LinkedIn Learning or Google Certificates allow people to learn new, marketable job skills, data analysis, project management really rapidly. And crucially, these courses often integrate the specific professional terminology in English.
So you're not just learning, say, Python, you're learning how to write a professional report about your data findings using the accepted industry jargon, all in English.
The learning of the skill and the learning of the professional language are interwoven.
The materials case study on presentation skills is a perfect illustration of this.
It is. An online course can teach you how to structure a persuasive talk, how to use visuals effectively, how to handle Q&A, all through these modular digital sessions. It directly improves extremely high-value professional communication skills and builds real practical confidence.
Okay, so we've established that technology is this incredible engine for growth. Now, we have to pivot to the serious warnings the sources provide. Where does the convenience start to slide into complacency? How does it make us intellectually lazy?
This is the shadow side of the digital age, for sure. The very tools that are designed for efficiency can, if we're not careful, lead to intellectual atrophy. And the central concept here is cognitive offloading.
Meaning we outsource our mental tasks to external devices.
Exactly. When convenience makes us stop exercising a mental muscle, the underlying skill weakens. We use a calculator for simple arithmetic. We rely entirely on spell check to catch fundamental errors.
Or using GPS for every single journey without ever building a mental map of our own city.
That's a perfect example. I think we all recognize that feeling when the GPS dies and suddenly you realize you have no idea where you are.
You're completely lost.
That's a real-world example of that underlying skill degrading. And for language learners, this is an acute risk. Over-reliance on translation apps or AI writing tools, it skips the crucial, effortful struggle.
Because struggle is the learning process, isn't it?
It is. Figuring out complex grammar or memorizing new vocabulary through repetition. If you use an AI to bypass the hard work of structuring an essay, you miss out on the critical mental process of synthesis and organization that actually builds your intellectual capacity. Hashtag 2.2 dual process thinking and attention fragmentation. The whole structure of the digital world, favoring immediate answers, it heavily influences how we choose to think. It pushes us toward what psychologists call System 1 thinking.
Which is the fast, intuitive, automatic stuff.
Right. And it actively pulls us away from System 2 thinking, which is slow, effortful, analytical, and absolutely necessary for deep learning and mastery.
So we default to the quick mental shortcut because it's always available, even when the problem really requires that slow System 2 effort.
Precisely. And this is compounded by the design of online content, the constant stream of quickly digestible, bite-sized information. This habituates the brain to these quick hits of novelty.
Which makes it exponentially harder to sustain attention on tasks that are inherently demanding.
Like reading a long academic paper or following a detailed hour-long lecture.
We all feel this, don't we? That inability to just settle into a 50-page report without checking our phone or opening another tab. The sources highlight this as the erosion of deep reading.
And it's a genuine concern. The online habit of skimming, scanning for keywords, reading in these short bursts, it actively undermines our ability to engage with text immersively.
And deep reading is essential for understanding nuanced, complex arguments.
All the sophistication required for advanced language comprehension, and the connection to memory is immediate. If we can search for a fact or a date instantly, why would we bother committing it to long-term memory?
But the very act of actively retrieving information from memory is what strengthens that memory trace.
Right, so if we skip that retrieval step by always relying on our digital external brain, our Notes app, Google search, we weaken our neural ability to recall that information when the device isn't handy.
We basically condition ourselves to need a technological prompt to function cognitively. And this leads to the whole issue of attention fragmentation.
The constant battle against digital distraction. Juggling multiple tabs, email pings, social media alerts, this is not efficient multitasking.
No, research is pretty clear on that.
It confirms that constant task switching massively increases cognitive load, the unproductive kind. Every time you switch, your brain has to reorient, making complex tasks like detailed analysis significantly less efficient.
And the platforms are engineered to exploit this vulnerability, creating a dopamine feedback loop that rewards instant, trivial engagement over the sustained, difficult effort required for genuine mastery.
Absolutely. And the stark realization here is that focus is no longer an automatic thing. It's a highly valuable skill that you have to consciously train.
So techniques like the Pomodoro method, or dedicating tech-free study zones, or just turning off all notifications.
They're now essential survival strategies for deep thought. Hashtag 2.3 undermining problem solving and creativity.
So if we let technology do all the hard mental work, we undermine our own capacity for independent problem solving. If an AI drafts the email or summarizes the report, we're bypassing that critical internal process.
We skip the intellectual work of structuring an argument, of taking disparate pieces of data and synthesizing them into a cohesive whole, of finding a unique, original perspective. The sources really emphasize that this reliance on automation or common templates leads to a homogenization of thought.
And if everyone's using the same report template or the same AI prompt, how do you stand out?
You don't. And worse, it leaves you unprepared for novel problems that require a truly custom, a fresh, and creative approach, something AI is, at least for now, not very good at.
And in the workplace, If machines handle all the routine problem solving, humans get fewer opportunities to build those crucial soft skills.
Like resilience, strategic analysis, creative thinking. Those skills are forged in the fire of wrestling with difficult, messy problems.
The ease of finding information online also fosters what the sources call a copy-paste mentality.
Right. It's just easier to reproduce something you found than to genuinely understand it and express it in your own voice. It's a fundamental challenge to intellectual rigor.
And what about creativity? The warning there seems stark.
It is. Relying too heavily on generative AI for content can stifle a user's own creative spark and unique voice. The output might be technically flawless, grammatically impeccable, but it often lacks personal insight or those unexpected connections that come from genuine human thought.
So the solution isn't to reject AI, but to use it wisely.
Exactly. Use AI for brainstorming, to outline ideas, to check grammar, but the actual crafting, the synthesis, the unique voice, that has to remain the user's responsibility. That's how we augment our minds rather than replace them. Hashtag 2.4 social, emotional, and distraction effects. We should also acknowledge the social and emotional toll. All this reduced face-to-face time, which is so common now, can hinder the development of fluency, accurate pronunciation, and the ability to read nonverbal cues.
All critical components of human communication that are just really hard to replicate fully on a screen.
They are, and primarily text-based communication, where so much of our interaction now happens, can chip away at our capacity for empathy because we miss the subtle cues of tone, body language, facial expression.
Nuance just gets lost.
It does. Then we come back to the problem of echo chambers. Social media algorithms are designed to prioritize content that confirms our existing beliefs. By limiting our exposure to diverse perspectives, these platforms can effectively stunt intellectual growth.
Locking you inside a mental filter bubble.
It's a real danger. And that instant gratification loop of digital engagement, the constant positive feedback, is a powerful force that often prioritizes ease and pleasure over the sustained, difficult work required for real mastery.
Which brings us full circle, back to cognitive load and distraction.
The necessity of juggling multiple communication streams and work tasks just significantly increases that cognitive overhead from constant switching, reducing our efficiency in the high-demand tasks that define advanced work.
Okay, we've covered two incredibly powerful and often contradictory forces. Technology is a genuine double-edged sword. It offers this massive empowerment and efficiency, but also creates a massive risk of intellectual complacency.
And the outcome isn't determined by the tool itself, it's determined by the user.
That is the core takeaway, isn't it? Intentionality?
It has to be. We have to be deeply strategic. We must actively choose to use tools to expand our minds for organization, for access, while consciously setting up defenses against the downside of outsourcing our thinking.
So that means deliberately seeking out high-quality, challenging content that forces that system to thinking.
Engaging with it critically and ensuring that independent practice is a priority. Write that essay yourself first. Solve the problem on paper. Have the spontaneous conversation without a translation crutch.
This elevates the necessity of digital literacy. It's not just knowing how to click a button anymore.
No, digital literacy now means understanding how algorithms work, how filter bubbles are constructed, how to critically evaluate conflicting sources, spot bias, and synthesize evidence. These are the core intellectual skills of the 21st century.
So the best path forward is clearly a blended learning approach.
Combining the efficiency of digital tools for drills, data access, with rigorous offline methods like face-to-face discussion, focused reading, pen and paper problem solving, that's what builds a truly robust and resilient intellectual capacity.
The power is real, but the price of complacency is intellectual stagnation.
The material's message is clear. Technology should serve to augment your mind, not replace it.
And that leaves us with this provocative thought on the technology theme. The choice is ultimately yours. Will you wield technology intentionally to learn deeply and embrace the struggle, or will you let its incredible conveniences lull you into comfortable mental stagnation? It requires constant vigilance.
Okay, now we pivot inward. We're moving from the external tool of the screen to the internal tool that shapes all human cognition. Language. We need to grapple with the deep, sometimes subconscious influence that language structure has on how we perceive reality.
We use language constantly, but we rarely stop to think that the specific language we use might be profoundly guiding our internal cognitive landscape. It's so much more than just forming sentences.
The foundation of this whole idea is the work of Edward Sapir and Benjamin Lee Whorf, which forms the Sapir-Whorf hypothesis. Their key insight was that the structure of a language doesn't just mirror reality. It actively biases or guides how its speakers perceive and think about that reality.
The material makes a critical distinction here between the strong and weak versions of this hypothesis, right? The strong one is largely discounted today.
Correct. The strong version, linguistic determinism, claimed that language entirely determines thought. It sets an absolute cage around what you could conceive. If you didn't have a word for it, you couldn't think it.
Which has been pretty much rejected because obviously we can conceptualize new ideas, we invent new words.
Yeah, thought can transcend our current linguistic limitations. So the focus today is on the weaker version, linguistic relativity.
Okay, and that version holds that language doesn't determine thought, but it.
It influences, biases, or guides it. By making certain ways of thinking easier, more accessible, or more habitual, the language structure subtly directs our cognitive attention. And this version is supported by a significant body of modern empirical evidence. Hashtag tag 3.2 grammatical structures and cognitive processing.
So let's start with a classic area of study, how language structures influence our perception of time. English, for instance, uses these explicit tense markers, past, present, future. And this leads to time being conceptualized as a linear, segmented commodity.
Right. We save time, we spend time, we waste time.
Exactly. And Worf famously contrasted this with his analysis of the Hopi language, suggesting their grammar focused more on duration and cyclical nature.
And while that specific Hopi analysis is debated now, the core idea that grammar biases time perception has been thoroughly investigated by modern cognitive scientists.
And the research by Lira Boroditsky on spatial metaphors for time provides some really powerful evidence here.
This is a fantastic example of a measurable cognitive bias. In English, we almost exclusively use horizontal metaphors. We look forward to a meeting, we put the past behind us.
Time moves along a horizontal line for us.
It does. But Mandarin Chinese commonly uses vertical metaphors. The word for up can refer to the previous week, and down can refer to the next week. Past is up, future is down.
That's fascinating, but does it actually affect how the brain works?
Measurably so. Boroditsky's studies showed that Mandarin speakers were consistently faster at answering time-related questions when the visual cues were presented vertically, while English speakers were faster when the cues were horizontal.
So the linguistic frame, our habitual way of talking about it, influences the speed and efficiency of our cognitive processing.
It's a linguistic bias that results in processing efficiency. It's not that we can't think of it differently, but our default is faster.
Wow. Okay, now consider a completely different grammatical feature.
Yeah.
Arbitrary grammatical gender in languages like German or Spanish.
Right. Nouns are assigned genders that often have no connection to biology. The German word for bridge, Brücke, is feminine. The Spanish word puente is masculine.
And researchers tested whether this arbitrary feature influences how speakers think about these inanimate objects.
They did. They asked German and Spanish speakers to describe the same object, like a bridge, using 3 adjectives. The results are telling.
What were the differences?
The German speakers, whose word for bridge is feminine, were much more likely to use adjectives like elegant, fragile, and delicate. The Spanish speakers, whose word is masculine, were more likely to use adjectives like strong, sturdy, tall, and dangerous.
So the grammar, which seems totally arbitrary, subtly biases how we conceptualize an object's inherent qualities. It adds this involuntary layer of cognitive nuance.
It does. And one last fascinating example is evidentiality, a grammatical requirement in languages like Turkish. In English, I can say the prime minister resigned without indicating how I know that.
Right, you could have seen it on the news or just heard a rumor.
Exactly. But in Turkish, the grammar often requires the verb ending itself to specify the source of information, whether you witnessed it directly, inferred it from evidence, or just heard it reported by someone else.
So the grammar forces you to evaluate and encode the reliability of your evidence into every single statement.
And this constant requirement is thought to foster a heightened, perhaps subconscious sensitivity to information sourcing and evidence. Speakers of these languages might be naturally more attuned to the basis of their knowledge simply because their language demands it every time they speak. Hashtag tag 3.3 vocabulary, perception, and cultural lenses.
Okay, moving to vocabulary. The sheer number of words a language has for certain concepts, lexical specificity, is where language acts as a powerful cultural lens, defining and categorizing reality based on what's culturally relevant.
And the classic demonstration of this is in color perception. The physical spectrum of light is universal, but how we segment it with words is not. Consider Russian, which has 2 separate, distinct core terms for light blue, goluboy, and dark blue, sini.
So they're treated as distinct categories, like how English treats red and orange.
Exactly. And the research confirms this linguistic distinction actually enhances perception. Studies found that Russian speakers are measurably faster at distinguishing between two shades of blue if those shades cross that Snegleboy boundary.
Faster than English speakers are at distinguishing the exact same two shades. But hold on, does this mean they literally see the colors differently?
That's the critical academic debate. The research leans toward the idea that it's not changing the basic physical perception of the eye, but it changes the speed and efficiency of the brain's categorization and processing of that visual input.
The language makes a distinction highly salient and habitual.
Yes. And another incredibly powerful example of this is the Gugu Yumir spatial language used by an Aboriginal community in Australia.
This one is truly mind-boggling.
It is. Their language uses cardinal directions, north, south, east, west, almost exclusively, even for small-scale space. Instead of saying the spoon is to your right, they would say the spoon is northwest of the plate.
That imposes this constant, immense cognitive demand. To speak this language, you have to maintain absolute spatial orientation at all times.
You have to know where north is, even indoors, in the dark. And the research shows this linguistic demand results in extraordinary real-world cognitive skills. Gugu Yumir speakers have exceptional spatial reasoning and navigational abilities. Their language trains this highly acute cognitive skill.
And language also serves as a cultural repository, right? Storing shared values within idioms and metaphors.
Yes, the English phrase "time is money" reinforces a cultural value of efficiency, productivity, viewing time as this limited commodity you can budget.
You can contrast that with phrases in other cultures that might emphasize fluidity or social obligation instead.
The cultural discourse is embedded in the language itself. And of course, there's the famous example of the Inuit vocabulary for snow and ice.
While the exact number of words is often exaggerated, the concept holds true.
It does. A rich, differentiated vocabulary highlights distinctions that are critical for survival in their environment. It directs perception, forcing speakers to notice subtle differences in snow texture that would be totally invisible to someone who just has the one word, snow.
And finally, the material mentions the structural elegance of Arabic root morphology, where many words are built from common roots.
Like KTB for writing, book, writer. It shows how a language can highlight the inherent interconnectedness of concepts, potentially fostering a more holistic thinking style. Hashtag 3.4, emotional granularity and reasoning styles. Language also plays an intimate role in shaping our emotional lives, often through these untranslatable emotion words.
These are those single words that require a whole sentence to translate. German Schadenfreude, Japanese mono no aware, Portuguese saudade.
Right. And the fact that a language has a single, easily accessible label for a complex emotional state makes that state more salient and easier to recognize and discuss. This relates to emotional granularity.
The ability to articulate and differentiate between subtle emotional states.
And having a richer, more specific emotional vocabulary, which language facilitates, actually correlates with better emotional regulation and overall psychological well-being. Language gives us a crucial cognitive toolkit for parsing our internal emotional landscape.
Beyond emotions, the underlying structure of language may predispose us to different reasoning styles.
Yes, the sources contrast holistic thinking, often associated with languages like Chinese, which tend to be context-dependent and focus on relationships and the big picture,
with the more analytical thinking often favored by languages with a rigid subject-verb-object structure, like English, which emphasizes individual agents and linear cause and effect.
Richard Nisbet's research suggests these linguistic frames subtly steer our fundamental approach. If you ask someone to describe a picture of a pond with a fish, the English speaker might focus on the fish's action, but a speaker of a holistic language might start by describing the environment, the weeds, the water, before even mentioning the fish.
So the language trains you to prioritize specific elements in a scene. Hashtag 3.5, the power of multilingualism. Now, for the listener who speaks multiple languages, this relationship between language and thought isn't fixed. It's dynamic. And multilingualism clearly offers significant cognitive advantages.
Oh, it acts as ongoing high-demand cognitive exercise. The constant need to select one language system while actively inhibiting the other strengthens high-level executive functions.
Skills like multitasking, task switching, inhibitory control.
That constant mental gymnastics just makes the brain more flexible and efficient overall.
And There's also the profound link to cognitive reserve.
Yes. Research suggests that lifelong bilingualism helps build resilience against the effects of brain aging, potentially delaying the onset of clinical symptoms of dementia. It's like having a more robust, active brain operating system.
Crucially, multilinguals gain access to multiple cognitive toolkits.
They have different linguistic lenses. They can choose the most effective language for a specific task, maybe English for technical precision in a science report, but their native language for nuanced emotional expression.
And the sheer act of navigating multiple systems gives them a heightened metalinguistic awareness.
They're forced to constantly reflect on language itself and recognize it not as a transparent window onto reality, but as a system of categories and biases. That awareness is a powerful tool for critical thinking. Hashtag TagTech 3.6, practical takeaways and future evolution. Understanding linguistic relativity isn't just an academic exercise. It has vital practical takeaways. It demands critical application. When you're reading, you need to recognize how the dominant language, often English, might be framing an issue or burying alternative perspectives.
And in the professional world, this awareness is crucial for intercultural competence. Recognizing that small linguistic differences might reflect fundamental disagreements in conceptual frameworks is essential for avoiding costly misunderstandings.
And on a personal level, this knowledge provides a path to self-awareness. Reflecting on your own linguistic filter is a way to understand your own defaults and to foster empathy for others who operate with entirely different linguistic lenses.
Now, we have to acknowledge this is a debate. There are strong arguments for cognitive universalism, the idea that the core machinery of thought is the same for all humans.
And we must ethically avoid linguistic stereotyping, recognizing that while language may bias group tendencies, it doesn't define any single individual.
And finally, we have to look at the future frontiers. Globalization, social media, so they're creating these hybrid linguistic landscapes. But the biggest unknown is the rise of AI-generated language.
That's a huge question. If machines start generating a massive percentage of the text we consume, how might the stylistic norms and statistical biases embedded in that machine language subtly influence our own human cognition and linguistic habits over time?
Will it lead to a homogenization of style, where our communication becomes technically flawless but conceptually impoverished?
Will the machine's inherent structural tendencies slowly creep into and flatten our own nuanced, messy human ways of thinking? It's a completely new, profound frontier in the relationship between communication and cognition. Hashtag outro.
So we've taken a journey through the external forces of technology and the internal structures of language, identifying both as powerful filters on human cognition. Technology offers incredible efficiency, but it demands mindful use and digital literacy to avoid that mental stagnation.
And language, meanwhile, is an active force, shaping perception, emotion, and our fundamental reasoning styles. The central insight remains this. The path to becoming more articulate, smarter, and more discerning is not a passive one.
It requires intentionality.
In our digital habits and critical reflection on the linguistic filters we use every time we speak or think, by understanding these filters, we gain profound insight into the diversity of human experience and the different realities we all construct.
Which brings us back to our final provocative thought for you to chew on. Given the accelerating evolution of language driven by globalization, technology, and the subtle increasing influence of AI, how might our collective cognition continue to transform in the coming decades? And what does that ongoing transformation mean for our ability to truly understand ourselves and each other across these linguistic divides? The evolution of the human mind is happening now, and you are right in the middle of it.